Could sleep studies be basically a big scandal, scam, money pit? That's what I want to cover because a lot of people will ask, like, hey, should I get a sleep study? I already got one done. How do I check in on how my sleep is now? What about the results of my sleep study? And, should I get another one? Like, there's all these questions. But the reason people have these questions is because something feels off. There's a little bit of doubt because when sleep studies just kind of come out of nowhere and then everybody who gets one has sleep apnea magically, starts to feel a little, something like you should question. And in fact, if we look at some good old corporations here who are not a fan of the channel, but they do watch, ResMed is that, they've gone through some issues of where, filing false claims because some questionable, kickbacks for sleep apnea and stuff. So we want to be able to think for ourselves, perhaps just a little bit, just for like the next few minutes. Okay, not much more beyond that. But we want to do that because when you're tired, really, a lot of people can go down the option of having to go down to, the CPAP route over here. But the thing is, if you know the truth about a lot of these mechanisms of measurement, you may have some better options. Allegedly, because this is all for educational purposes only. So today, we are going to cover the history of sleep studies, some cost-effective ways, and also alternatives to monitor. And of course, I know I had my dolphin disclaimer over there, but once again, this is for educational purposes. This is for medical advice only. Also, please subscribe to the channel. All right, now let's go back to I forget where my chart ends, the 80s here. So here's the increase in sleep apnea over the years. Look at this here. It's gone way up. So some of the original research done in the late 70s here, or it was definitely the late 70s. So when they first started looking for sleep apnea, it was a prevalence about 4%, which has increased to about 30%. Pretty crazy. Now I'm going to show you another graph, and you're going to think that I just copy and paste the same exact graph. This is the number of sleep centers. And if we zoom out, it's coincidence? I don't know. I'm not saying ice cream causes a lot of drowning in the summer, but that's the most complicated way I could have said correlation does not equal causation. But the fact of the matter is, there are a few things we can point to: obesity, people being more stressed out, more electronics at night, hurting sleep, etc. But to go from 4 to 30% and having a almost identical rise, if we look at the just percent change, obviously, between these. Okay, so this is where we want to start to ask ourselves, like, is all of this real that we're finding? Because whenever you test something, I think we do get into statistics a little bit later. The more you test, the more you will find. These are called false positives. False positives do have some consequence. Now, of course, we'll get into that in a moment, but just I'll let you read in between the lines here because there's certain things I can't say. Well, I can say it, but, there's probably some consequences to that. Now, at the same time, the reason these go up is because of something like this. Because when I got my sleep study, I saw something similar to this on the bill. Sometimes, like, you probably don't know this, but maybe not everybody has experienced this. Sometimes you get the bill from like the provider and you're supposed to send it to your insurance and you'll see like a huge number on there and you're like, oh my God, thank God I had insurance, right? So mine was around like 10 or 15 when I got my sleep study done in a lab here, which apparently is not uncommon for that bill. And of course, on the backside of this is the sleep apnea device. So we've seen a big increase, a big incentivized financially increase in testing. And lo and behold, the apnea device market going way, way up. And that's why the sleep apnea device market is one of like the fastest growing in the medical industry here. Now, since the advent of COVID, a lot of these sleep studies and labs got shifted to being at home. And, you'll have people at Harvard say, like, they're not as good, 80% chance it'll be right. But in reality, that's kind of like mildly regurgitated stuff from sleep medicine textbooks. And the accuracy of these things are actually above 90%. Still around $200. And then, like, the stupidest, it's so freaking stupid. Oftentimes, doctors will do this study and then they'll do it in a lab study. Like, it's so dumb because when something's already 90% accurate and then, like, doing it again at the expense of, like, anywhere from, like, 3 to $10,000, like, why? Why are we doing this? Anyway, and to make things even worse, regardless of how this study goes, even if you do at home or even if you get, like, a in-lab one, if it's negative, this is legitimately from the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. If it's negative, you say screw it and you then elevate your testing. You're going to go to a sleep specialist and then get a PSG overnight thing. This is not how anyone should ever be doing medical testing. It's almost like they want you to test positive. Just saying. So that's why I always ask, like, is all of this necessary? Now, obviously, don't change anything for your health based on what you learn from YouTube. That would just be silly. But I would like you to appreciate this duck and how it looks like a duck, perhaps quacks like a duck, questionably a duck here. That's why I want to go over some other ways in which you could look at sleep studies and how they're used. And of course, disclaimer, trying to think for yourself can cause headaches, all these different things. We need to first talk about PPV. All right. We need to talk about PPV, positive predictive value. So all of these people, they got a test, but one of these people who tested positive doesn't have it. So that's 9 out of 10 of these positives are true positives. So about 90% of those positives were a true positive. That's a good test. Now, let's say a different test, right? Let's say we flip this. 10 people tested positive, but only 1 out of 10 were actually positive. That is a low positive predictive value, a low PPV of 10%. So we want like 90% and above, because that's pretty definitive here. So we got some other things. Asking questions. The stop bang questionnaire. The questionnaire from this stop bang, it's really simple. You can just look it up. Like 8 questions. This has been found to have a positive predictive value of 99.5%. That's pretty good. All right. So say if 1,000 people took it and 995 of those people would correctly be identified with sleep apnea. And then that's not just that one. There's also the Berlin questionnaire. I don't know what makes it Berlin. Probably made from Berlin or it's in German. I don't know. 96 positive predictive value. These are just questions. Questions on a piece of paper. Paper arguably cheaper than, $200, $1,000. But again, can't tell you it's diagnostic. Can't say that. Not saying that. And when we compare that to like an actual lab study, yes, this is higher. Okay. But when we think about it, because I said out of 1,000 people, let's say out of 1,000, like we said, 5 people would get missed here versus 10 to 20 of a lab study. They're basically on par. But yet, you gotta get the screener, then you gotta do the at home, and you go at lab, and then you need to do all these other things. It's crazy. I'm not saying don't do it. Obviously, talk to your doctor, right? But we had to ask ourselves why that is. This happens to justify these things, right? The CPAP, surgery, mouth guards, all those other things. Now, there are other things that can give you insights, obviously not diagnostic whatsoever, but there are other things that have pretty good PPVs. And not only for seeing if you should really have a great in depth conversation with your physician about getting tested further for sleep apnea, but also if you are wondering, well, like, okay, I got a sleep study a year ago, 2 years ago. How can I track how I'm doing? And that's where overnight pulse oximetry comes in. Pulse ox, the little thing you put on your finger or your wrist, something of that nature, it has pretty high positive predictive value of 92. So that means if 100 people are tested positive by this, 92 out of 100 truly have sleep apnea. All right. I don't really have any brand recommendations because I just don't do that. Don't give out brand recommendations. And the thing that I really like to see in these, it is just this of where's the yeah, you can get the before and after here. So the very bottom, this is very interesting. This is like very positional here. Sorry. So I should probably tell you what the heck we're looking at. So Up and down. This is someone's like blood oxygen level. All right. These are huge dips. These. Trying to think. This is from a study. Who like this is really bad. I don't ever see him like dip into the 60s. Rarely. It's been a while. I don't think ever, really. Nonetheless, sorry for my rambling. But these are big dips down, et cetera, et cetera. And then for some reason, this person isn't dipping here. Maybe their mask flies off, or I have no idea. This is pretty crazy. But as time goes on, say they're making improvements, maybe weight loss, myofunctional, or breathing exercises, it will start to even out here. They have fewer dips, fewer dips, fewer dips. And then time goes on, gets even better. Time goes on, gets even better. That's why I think the ultimate tool in measuring your progress, and I know some people like to track Oscar data. If you don't know what that is, it's just how the airflow is going in and out of you if you're using a CPAP or BiPAP or some other sort of device. But ultimately, the end goal we want to know is how are the oxygen levels in your blood doing? That's like the ultimate endpoint. Because if you're not ventilated with air, it's going to affect your oxygen levels in your blood. Not so good, right? And there's gonna be some people who, well, I mean, really the majority of people who stop using a CPAP after about a year. 7% of people say CPAP not for me, and what are they to do? This is the best way to monitor someone's blood oxygen levels. And blood oxygen levels are going at night specifically, are going to be tied to quality of sleep and also how you're breathing. Are they diagnostic? I can't say that. So, whatever inferences you want to make about today, that's entirely up to you and your physician. So, hopefully, that gives you a little bit more background understanding of the environment of a lot of sleep studies and technologies, because perhaps it's a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. And that's just my personal opinion. And if you do one thing here today, I do think a pulse oximeter of some sort, I'm not going to give recommendations, but whether it's from Amazon or somewhere else, are really, really super helpful to have metrics because out of all the different sleep trackers, if someone has sleep apnea, one of the most important things someone can track is their actual oxygen levels. So, just a thought. I know we're nowhere near Christmas, or maybe you watch this video 6 months later, or maybe Father's Day is coming up. And you want to get an overnight pulse ox for yourself or someone you love. Consider it, my friend. Something also you can consider is a sleep apnea reset protocol workshop that will also be a great Father's Day gift because it comes with great recipes for grilling hamburgers. It doesn't at all. But what it can help with is naturally supporting your breathing at night, which is pretty cool because not breathing at night is not cool. 4 out of 5 dentists would agree about that statement. The fifth dentist, he is on parole. But what is true is that you could go from, cranky breathing over here with faster regular breathing, learn how to retrain your breathing and feel a lot better with that there. So, yeah, that's there. There'll be a button somewhere on the screen. And yeah, there's, the website there, stagenow.com/reset. And what else I got here? I didn't make a guide for this episode because there wasn't much to do. Subscribe. And of course, you want to learn about working more directly with us. Got the program there. You can read that on your own time. All right. Thanks for watching. Let me know. Got any questions or other things you want to see discussed here, and I'll see you soon.